Lagos, the city of dreams, was a place where people came to make something of themselves. It was a city that held promise, and for Inioluwa, it held the promise of a beautiful future. She had grown up with dreams of finding a love that would make her heart race, a love that would fill her life with joy and adventure. When she met Ireoluwa, everything about them seemed to align with the dreams she had cherished since childhood. Ireoluwa was tall, well spoken, and had an air of confidence that commanded respect. He worked in a real estate, and his business acumen had earned him admiration and success among his peers. He was a gentleman by all appearance, and his attention to detail made Inioluwa feel special. He would open doors for her, pull out chairs, and offer his hand whenever she stepped out of a car. His gesture spoke of chivalry, and his words seemed genuine. Their courtship was a wild wind, a romantic dinners, late night, phone calls, promises of a future filled with happiness. Ireoluwa was attentive and charming, always knowing exactly what to make her feel adored. In his presence, Inioluwa felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. He was her dream come true, the man she had prayed for. When he proposed to her, Inioluwa felt like her dreams were unfolding in reality. She said yes, and they had a lavish wedding that was the talk of the town. Friends and family watched them exchange vows with tears of joy, celebrating what seemed to be a union destined for greatness. They were the perfect couple, and everyone admired them. Oh yes, love is so sweet. However, it didn't take long for cracks to appear in this perfect picture. Just weeks into their marriage, Ireoluwa's demeanor began to shift in subtle ways. At first, it was his tone, sharp and demanding, unlike the gentle, considerate man she had dated. He would dismiss her opinions as naive and insist that he knew what best for them. She found herself second-guessing every little thing she did, wondering if it would set him off. One evening, after an argument over something as trivial as dinner not being warm enough, Ireoluwa snapped. He didn't hit her, but his voice rose and his face twisted in anger in a way she had never seen before. The way he towered over her, his fist clenched, made her heart pound with fear. But then, just as quickly, he softened, apologizing, profusing, and pulling her into his arms. "I'm sorry, my love," he whispered. "I'm just under a lot of stress with work. It won't happen again." Inioluwa wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the man she had married was still the same gentle, caring person she had known during their courtship. She brushed off her discomfort, telling herself that every marriage had its challenges, and that her love for Ireoluwa would help them overcome these small hurdles. She didn't tell anyone about the incidents, not even her closest friend, Morayo. She didn't want to tarnish the image of her perfect marriage, the marriage she had dreamed of and worked so hard to build. But as soon as the days turned into weeks, Inioluwa found herself feeling increasingly isolated. Ireoluwa's behavior continued to shift, becoming more unpredictable. At times, he was the loving husband she had fallen in love with, showering her with affection, small gifts, but at other times, his anger seemed to simmer just beneath the surface, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. She began to walk on eggshells around him, hoping to avoid triggering his temper. In quiet moments, she would look at herself in the mirror and wonder if she had done something wrong, if she had somehow failed as a wife. Her dreams of a happy, loving marriage felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. And yet, she held onto hope, clinging to the belief that things would get better. After all, she loved Ireoluwa. She had vowed to stand by him through thick and thin. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test her strength, her resilience, and ultimately, her very life. Life with Ireoluwa was becoming a constant balancing act for Inioluwa. In public, he remained the perfect husband, charming, attentive, and affectionate. His friends and business associates admired him, praising him for his accomplishments and for the beautiful wife by his side. They envied their seemingly ideal marriage, but none of them saw what happened behind closed doors of their home. At first, Ireoluwa believed that adjusting to married life was supposed to be challenging. She heard other women talk about importance of patience, compromising for the sake of peace. Marriage is not always easy, her mother often told her, but a good wife knows how to make it work. And so, she pushed aside her worries, focusing instead on keeping her home just as Ireoluwa liked it. However, Ireoluwa's demands grew with each passing day. He began to dictate what she would wear, how she should style her hair, and even the friends she was allowed to keep. He would insist on knowing every detail of her day, questioning her as if she lingered too long on a phone call or if she left the house without informing him. At first, she thought this attention came from a place of love, but as possessiveness escalated, she realized that he was trying to control her every move. One evening, while preparing dinner, Inioluwa accidentally burned the stew. It was a minor mistake, something that could be easily fixed. But when Ireoluwa returned home and saw the charred pot on the stove, his face darkened. She tried to apologize, explain that she has been distracted and hadn't noticed the stew until it was too late. But he cut her off, his voice cold and hard. "Is this how you plan to treat our home, Inioluwa? With carelessness and indifference?" He spat, his eyes flashing with anger. "If you cannot handle something as simple as cooking, maybe you don't deserve to be here." Her heart sank and a wave of shame washed over her. She had never felt so small, so insignificant. The man she had fallen in love with, the man who had once promised to cherish and protect her, was now looking at her with disgust. She struggled to hold back her tears, biting her lip and nodding in silent apology. But the resentment in his eyes remained, a dark shadow that seemed to linger even after he turned and walked away. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, Ireoluwa's mind raced with questions. Had she really been so careless? Was she failing as a wife? She tried to convince herself that these small incidents were normal, that every couple had their ups and downs. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Oh yes, these are red flags in marriage. Something was definitely wrong. The next day, she confided in Morayo, her closest friend since childhood. Morayo was a strong-willed, outspoken woman who had always supported Inioluwa in times of trouble. They met at a quiet cafe where Inioluwa finally let down her guard and shared some of the struggles she's been facing. Morayo, things aren't as perfect as they seem. Inioluwa admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ireoluwa, he's changed. He's always angry with me, always criticizing everything I do. Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe around him. Morayo listened intently, her eyes filled with concern. Inioluwa, no man has the right to make you feel that way, she said firmly. Marriage is about partnership, not control. You shouldn't have to live in fear or constantly walk on eggshells around your own husband. But Inioluwa hesitated, struggling to voice her deepest fear. What if, what's my fault? What if I'm just not a good enough? The word tasted bitter on her tongue, but she couldn't help but wonder if she was somehow to blame. Morayo shook her head, reaching across the table to hold Inioluwa's hand. Listen to me, Eni. You are more than enough. Don't let him convince you otherwise. Remember, I'm here for you. Inioluwa forced a smile, grateful for Morayo's support. But as she returned home, her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. She wanted to believe Morayo's words, to see herself as strong and capable. But Ireoluwa's voice echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of her supposed failures. As days turned into weeks, the demand continued. Ireoluwa's criticisms became sharper. His moods were volatile. Inioluwa began to feel as though she was losing pieces of herself, bending and reshaping her identity to fit the mold of the perfect wife he seemed to demand. Every day felt like a new test, a new opportunity for her to fail in his eyes. And yet, she stayed. She told herself that all marriages had difficult times, that love was about compromise and endurance. She clung to the hope that things would improve, that Inioluwa's kindness would return if she only could prove herself worthy. But deep down, a seed of doubt had taken root. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man she had married was slowly slipping away, leaving her alone in a prison of expectations she would never be able to meet. As Inioluwa adjusted her life to fit Ireoluwa's increasing demands, she convinced herself that things would eventually stabilize. She clung to the hope that perhaps he was just stressed, that maybe his strictness would fade once they settled into new lives together. But even as she tried to remain optimistic, her spirit felt heavy. The love that once had lifted her heart now felt like a weight pressing down on her, slowly crushing the life out of her. One evening, Inioluwa prepared Ireoluwa's favorite meal, a rich spicy dish that he had once praised her for making perfectly. She poured her heart into the preparation, carefully seasoning and tasting, determined to please him and perhaps bring a hint of warmth back into their strained relationship. She arranged the meal on the table just before he walked through the door. When Ireoluwa entered the house, she greeted him with a warm smile, trying to mask the nervous flutter in her stomach. But he barely acknowledged her, his gaze sharp as he looked over the table, his brow furrowed as he was searching for something to criticize. "Is this all?" he asked, his voice laced with irritation as he looked at the meal before him. Inioluwa's smile faltered. She nodded, hoping he would appreciate the effort she had put in preparing his favorite dish. "Yes, I thought you might enjoy it." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, sitting down and taking a slow, deliberate bite. She watched him anxiously, praying that he would be pleased. But instead of a compliment or even a note of approval, he frowned and put down his fork. "This tastes different," he said, his tone cold and unforgiving. "Did you forget how to cook properly, Inioluwa?" The words stung sharper than she had anticipated.